Welcome to the Fantasy Thinker. I'm Jared Kodamich. Today, I have a special review of the history book, The Earth Transformed, an Untold History by Peter Frankopan. You've probably seen me already talk about this book a little bit on my channel updates and stuff like that, but now I finally finished it, and what a trip it was. So this large volume of a book here takes us on this epic journey of the actual history of the Earth, specifically like the environment, not just the humans on it, but like the Earth itself and everything that grows on it, and the climate around it. And so, this may you may think that this could lead to like a boring account of geological surveys and isotope data and sediment analysis. And that some of that stuff is mentioned in there, but Frank Copen, he keeps things spry by focusing specifically on the changes that occurred in the Earth and how that affected what our lives are like today, even stuff that happened millions of years ago. And so it's really fascinating how he does that. Um, Speaking of fascinating, this is these the aspects of here. One of the things he talks about in here is of this this big picture history type of book is how volcanic eruptions played such a huge role in how humans and later human society evolved. I thought that was very, very riveting. One of the more vivid examples was his explanation of, like, and this is just one of many in here, uh, like why the Dark Ages may have gotten its name. There were many reports during those times. This is after the fall of the Roman Empire, when Europe was broken up and stuff like that. And there were many reports of like dark clouds of like that smog. Basically, they didn't call it smog back then, but you can they ascertained that from the data that was basically like smog or the sun being blotted out for like decades at a time. And so these reports actually correlate with volcanic activity, spewing ash and that traveling over thousands of miles to blot out the sun for decades at a time. And so during that time, these volcanic eruptions most likely contributed to this smog filled darkening atmosphere, thus a moniker for the Dark Ages, right? um, and so not only that, but Frank Open details how the in this book how the movement of certain crops changed the face of history. And so because you don't think of that much. You think of humans that having wars and one society attacking another society and so on, and that being our history. But actually, he details a lot of ecological stuff like crops, like plants and animals and farming and herding, and how when humans shifted all these things around, that change history more than the actual fighting and stuff like that. A major example in the book is potatoes. So if I open the book here, yeah, 431, um, I can look at some certain passages here because potatoes can provide a lot of calories, vitamins, nutrients per acre of land than other staple crops. So there's tons of vitamins in these things, right? And so, and also potatoes can grow on land that's like not really suitable for cultivation of like wheat or rice, and they can be grown in areas that can be left fallow, and there's a lot of stuff that potatoes are adaptable for crop production. And so it wasn't introduced into Europe and Russia until like the later 17th century, and and so at this time the potatoes ended up having more of a like they were considered to have like these miraculous properties, basically, and um, the potatoes that because of the extra nutrition basically that potatoes brought to Europe, uh, it can be correlated with the data for less violence, less war, because the lower classes were able to be better fed because of the ease of growing potatoes in these areas, and it was just like a very fascinating correlation, um, and we had to increase agricultural productivity, reducing the requirements for land in the process, and thereby watering down competition for its control. And so um, this this was really some fascinating details, that you don't think about that kind of stuff as like climate change, and you don't think about it as history making, but it really is. So, uh, there are tons of examples like this in the book to show how ecological change leads to change in environment, leads to change in climate, leads to change in culture and society, and how everything is so tied together. And that's big picture history right there. Um, so, even if I look into the table of contents here, um, he goes starts off with the world and the dawn of time, and that's when you get into all the geological data and stuff like that. Then you also have, that gets into the origin of our species, and he gets into how humans started interacting with ecologies. This is prehistory stuff. And then he gets into like the first cities and trade networks, which significantly changed the environment around those cities. It was a huge impact at the time on the environment around those cities, and then it gets into like the first cities, and then we gets into the risk of living beyond one's means, which the first cities did. A lot of these first cities that arose, they actually ended up failing because they outstripped the area they were in, and they didn't have the means of long distance shuffling of foods and stuff like that to feed the people. So these cities would fail, and they would pop up again somewhere else eventually down the line. Um, and so then we get into, still in the BC area, we get into this first age of connectivity, where these cities ended up growing into empires and getting a little bit more um, organized, and writing was developed. And so now they could actually keep track of stuff, and they started connecting with other places, like the Mesopotamian area started connecting with India, started connecting with Egypt and Europe, and Southern Europe, and even China in some cases, and the same thing over in the Americas. That's one thing I like about Frankopan's writing here, is he does not neglect the rest of the world. He really delves into societies other than um, European based viewpoints. So he really gets into India, he really gets into China, he really gets into even Southeast Asia, the Americas, Mesoamerica, and South America. Um, and he really spreads around Africa, and so he really spreads it around. It really gives you a total global viewpoint on this stuff, and so it's really cool. And he gets into regarding nature and the divine, and how humans started, and how humans connected nature with their the divine entities. It's to creating basically gods for everything that happened and stuff like that. Um, Then we start getting into the formation of bigger empires. We get into, he gets into Rome and all that. He gets into the crises of the late antiquity, which is where we hear about, the Dark Ages. And through all these periods, he does he also correlates big ecological events, hurricanes, typhoons, droughts, floods, um, warmings and coolings. And it really is fascinating how it all ties together. And so, and that goes on through the book as he, of course, the closer he gets to modern age, like all these big history books, the closer he gets to modern age, the more data he has, so the more he can put in the book. And as we go through the book here, I will admit, because this is just a quirk of mine. Um, when he gets to, like all these books, when they get to past 1970, 1980, I tend to speed read through those parts. I was alive during the 80s and 90s. I know what happened. Not that he doesn't bring a new viewpoint to that stuff like that, but I tend to speed read through those sections. So I did finish up the book really quickly in the last chapter in this book. That's just my personal quirk. The information in there was excellent. And if you're interested in current events, then I would definitely continue to immerse yourself in that chapter. So that is my full review of this book. Frankopan is a pleasure to read because his writing style it flows very well. Um, you don't get bogged down in too many scientific details. He explains it in a very matter of fact manner that is comes easy to you. And there's so much information when you have a history of the world, but he gives you a lot of untold, see, untold history, untold stuff that you definitely did not learn in high school, and most likely didn't even learn in college either, because he really delves into a lot of stuff that's fascinating, interesting information. And like a lot of history books, you could pick and choose your era that you want to read. So I definitely recommend this book highly, and I loved it. I thought it was really good. And so I'll be looking out for future Frank Copen books. I read his previous one called The Silk Roads, and that was great. So, recommended. Peter Frankopan, The Earth Transformed, An Untold History. If you like history, if you like big history, this is the book for you. Thank you. Like and subscribe, and be good to each other.